This is Katherine Cespedes, and you are listening to Yogini from the Block, where we talk about taking spiritual practices and spiritual principles off of the yoga mat and into our real lives. You can listen to this bi-weekly podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play Music, and anywhere that you catch your podcasts. Hello, this is episode number 6, titled Everybody Prays Sometimes, a life skill for anyone and everyone.
And your name is?
My name is Katherine Cespedes.
And I'm John Beethan, but it's Catherine's show.
It is. And John is that intro that you heard was created by John, and he is just absolutely amazing. So I want to say it publicly here.
Nice.
Thank you so much, John, for helping me and for helping me create this podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. It's divinely inspired for sure. And so I got the show notes a couple hours ago and with the title. And you walked in, and so I started asking you questions about what inspired this, basically, and you started talking, and I just said, save it for the podcast. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, what is the meaning of the title? So, for a long time, I have been trying to understand how to create my life, how to, manifest without being at the rock bottom. I felt for the time that when I left New York City and when I got here, I had nothing. So I had nothing to lose. And in that space, I was able to create the most I've ever created in the 27 years of living, right? And I thought it was so beautiful to be in that space of I don't know, I was hurting and I was in pain and I kind of felt like I needed healing. And yet in that space, I could create whatever I wanted. And now moving forward, I am happy. I am whole. I have always been whole, but now I can recognize it. And I am complete. And I have a question. Would you call that space an empty space that this came from?
I would call it the space, like the hallway. Like I didn't really know which door I was going to walk through next. Mm-hmm. And when you're in that space, at least for me anyway, you kind of feel lost. Mm-hmm. But no one is ever really lost. At least I don't think so. You're in that space when you're kind of just waiting, or not waiting. You're kind of just in transition. It's a transition space. Mm. So I remember this is where I started to create this relationship with God. And all I kept hearing was just pray, pray, pray. All you have to do is pray. Just pray. And I'm thinking, I don't want to pray. Why am I going to pray? What is the point in prayer? I don't want to beg for anything. I don't want to sit in that wanting, in that despair. I'm happy. So why do I have to pray? Because me and my notion of what prayer was, it was being on your knees, begging for something outside of you to listen, hoping that they would turn your direction and give you what you needed. Mm-hmm. And of course, this is just what my understanding of prayer was. And that doesn't mean that it's everyone's understanding. This is, what I understood prayer to be. So I kept hearing, just pray, just pray. And I was like, okay, which prayer do you want me to say? And then I realized that was me trying to follow the traditions that my family had taught me. I'm not saying that my family is wrong or they don't know. It's just this is what they were taught. And thus, it was transferred to me that this is what prayer is.
It was a tradition within your family.
Yeah, you beg, right? Prayer is beggary. Is that a word? That's what it felt like. Like, it felt like I'm asking, like, please, like, I think I deserve this. Please give it to me. So I was like, I don't want to pray because that doesn't feel good to me. So again, I'm hearing this pray, just pray. And then, long story short, I show up at Seaside and all they do is pray. And I'm like, okay, but their prayer feels good. What is the difference between what I think prayer is and what it is that we're doing here? Because
okay, so before, when you say what you thought prayer was, it's sort of in your head, not in your heart.
Right. So it was a battle between what I was thinking and how I was feeling. So just recently, I finished Power of Your Word with Reverend Christian at Seaside. And it was the most powerful class. And I'm probably going to say this about every single class, but this one taught me how to pray. Like, it's called spiritual mind treatment in Centers for Spiritual Living. So there's like this this way of how to communicate to spirit, to universe, right? And last Wednesday was the last Wednesday night power up. And Kim Jera, who was the speaker and who has helped me create Power Up, and she was there from the very beginning. You know, we were there together in meditation, and the practitioner who was supposed to help us with the meditation, she was running a little late. And I was like, all right, Kim Jera, I'm going to lead the meditation. She was like, you are? And I was like, yeah, just sit down, I'll prep it. And I did. And then at the end, I did a prayer. And when Kim Jera and I locked eyes, she was like, girl, that prayer was powerful. And I was like, thank you. I just graduated from Power of Your Word. And what happened in those 7 weeks was that I learned what spiritual mind treatment is and what that looks like and how that feels, and that I could resonate with. And then I discovered that we're all constantly prayer. Like, every thought is basically a prayer. Like, where anytime that we're like, I would really like this, or I love this, it's always a prayer. It's always this conversation with spirit, because spirit is never not there. Spirit is never like absent and then shows up, you know, at random. Right? There is never a point where God is like, you deserve this, you don't deserve this, I'll give you this, but I won't give you this. Like, God, spirit, universe, Allah is always there, is always present. And in these spiritual mind treatments, what you learn is to recognize God. So every time that I'm recognizing God, and every time that I wake up and I pray, and every time that I go to sleep and I pray, and every time that I write down my prayers, I realize that if I'm saying during my prayer that God is here right now, then that means that even when I'm not doing my spiritual mind treatment, God is here right now. And so I'm thinking, I've been praying my whole life. I've been praying. Every time I wake up and I open my eyes, I am praying. Every time that I am talking to someone, I am praying. I'm in constant prayer. We are in constant prayer in the way that I view it, in the way that I see it. And it's in that knowing, it's in standing in that power. It's in that recognition of the beauty and the energy that comes from that anything can happen, you know. And during the meditation right before Power Up, I remember going back to my yogi meditation. And by that, what I mean is I used to do meditation, right? I used to lead meditation. So I have no problem leading them. What I had a problem with was praying. That's what I had a problem with. So I didn't mind leading the meditations at Seaside. I had a problem with the prayer afterwards. So during this meditation on this day, I remember telling her to inhale and exhale. And I remember telling her to focus on that split second, that little moment of space between the inhale and the exhale. That's always there. It doesn't go anywhere. It's always there. It's always in motion. There's always a space. There's always a transition from the inhale and the exhale, and from the exhale and the inhale. And you'll probably notice it now that you're hearing it, but it's always there, and God is always there. Now, here's the part that got me. I said, it is in this moment, in this space of transition, that yogis strive for, that we're looking to create, that we're looking to really pay attention to, because it is in this moment that they say that anything is possible, that anything can happen, that any dreams, any vision, anything that you can possibly think of can occur. It's in this little space of the inhale and the exhale.
In between.
The in between, right. And to tie it into what I spoke about a couple minutes ago, this is where I was at when I was creating, because I was in this transition. I was in the hallway. I was in between the door and, you know, wherever I had just left. I was in the hallway. I was in the space. And so I was able to create whatever I wanted because I was in that space. Like, I was living in it. Like, there was no expectations. Like, there was this true, it's not void. It's like a black hole, because no one knows what's in a black hole. Anything is possible in there. And for me, what I started questioning at that point in my life was, I was going to church, and there's nothing wrong with going to church. I just want to state that. And my question was, and I remember asking this out loud, and I remember people turning and like, I think this girl, like, there's something wrong with her, right? My question was, why is darkness bad? Why is darkness bad? Like, I know we're all looking for the light, but why is it bad? Like, what happens there? And I remember talking to people about it, and then it came to the point where I was like, I should stop talking about this out loud. But to me, what I just started to discover was that in the darkness, what happens is that things start to create. And it's not that it's bad, it's just that we don't know what's creating under there. We don't know what we're really and truly thinking about and truly like focusing all of our energy and our time on. And so the most beautiful things happen in the dark. And this is what started like stirring things in me, where I'm like, the most beautiful like things happen. Like seeds are put into the ground, and in this ground there is darkness. And in this darkness, you need to trust that you're giving this plant water and you're giving it sunlight from above, and that inside of the seed there is growth. The nutrients is getting to the seed. You're giving it your energy, and eventually what we see, what comes to light, what comes out of that darkness is a beautiful flower or a carrot or whatever you planted in there, right? And it's the same thing with babies, with us, with our creation, right? No one really knows what's happening in there. I mean, of course, there's ultrasounds and you can kind of sort of see what's happening, but you don't really know. And it's all in the darkness. And then eventually we come out into the light. We come out into this world, and our mothers bring us into this planet, right? And again, it's all done in darkness. So it's that transition period. That transition period is that it's that pause in your breath. It's that time and energy spent on thinking what we're thinking. This is all done in the dark. And then it comes out to the light. It comes out into the light in the form of manifestation. It comes out into the light in the form of conversations. It comes out into the light in forms of serendipitous events and interactions, right? Because we've been thinking them, we've been creating them, we've been praying for them, we've been asking for them. And I realized everyone prays. Like, doesn't matter what religion, what culture, doesn't matter. Everyone comes at the end of the day to pray. Doesn't matter what you call it. It's a form of prayer.
So I've been sitting here and just in wonder. And there's one thing I'm aware of. Mm-hmm. It's been said.
Yes. Is
that, and this can be taken several different ways. I mean it only one way, which is that prayer can be thought of like talking to God or asking. Mm-hmm. Meditation can be like listening to God. Mm-hmm. So how do you equate? I mean, I'm sitting here looking at the structure of this point in this moment in the breath mm-hmm. between the inhale and the exhale and the exhale and the inhale. And there seems to be a relationship in terms of listening to that moment. Mm-hmm.
Well, there is this constant conversation that is happening. There is this constant back and forth. What I realized was that at that time I was doing a lot of meditation. I was doing a lot of listening. I was doing a lot of contemplation. I was doing a lot of observation. But I wasn't asking. I wasn't talking. I wasn't taking that opportunity now that I've been connected to go forth and just talk, ask, converse. Whatever that looks like. I was doing a lot of contemplation. I was sitting in the silence. I was feeling that connection. And then I was kind of like, all right, so you want me to pray? You want me to talk? You're asking me. You're literally asking me what it is that I want. And what's so funny is that during the class for Power of Your Word, I had the most amazing prayer partner. We all have to get a partner. And this one day, I didn't do my homework. It was the very end. We had spent maybe 3 or 4 hours doing our final project. And I was sitting there, and the homework was to write a spiritual mind treatment for 2 people. And so Reverend Christian had told us to read it to our partner. And I look over at my partner and I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't do my homework. And she was like, I know I didn't do mine either, because we spent so much time on our final project. And then she was like, okay, so what do you want? I was like, what do you mean? She was like, well, what do you want me to pray for you for? And I was like, oh, okay. What? She was like, well, yeah, what do you want me to pray? We'll just do it now. Like, we'll just pray for each other now. So you have 2 things. What 2 things do you want? I was like, oh my goodness, this is like having my own personal genie right now. What is it that you want? And we'll pray about it. We'll get you that, whatever it is. And I was like, well, now I got to think about it. What is like, it really felt like I had a genie at my disposal. And now we were going to go into that together, like join our consciousness and go into this space to asking and praying and talking. We're going to go and converse with God together. What do you want? What is it? And it was in that moment where I was like, wow, what better, like no one could have explained this to me in any other way. Not saying that people shouldn't do their homework. You should do your homework at all times. It just happens that for the 7 weeks we were on top of our homework. We would call each other, we would talk to each other. And then all of a sudden the last week, neither one of us was prepared, and neither one of us could have been prepared for this lesson that we were going to learn. Through this conversation that we were going to have together, we were going to connect with our spirit, with the universe, with ourselves, and we were going to go in there and talk together. So
from my perspective, you were well prepared.
We were more than prepared, because after that, I asked her, I was like, all right, it's your turn. Now, what do you want? And I never felt so empowered to sit there in front of someone she is just so brilliant, and ask them what she wanted. Like, what can I offer you now? Like, how can I return the favor to my genie? Like, I'm talking to my genie. How can I give you a wish now, genie? Like, think about that. That's really big. We always think, or at least I have, right? If I had a genie, I would ask for X, Y, and Z. But now I'm sitting here and I'm like, I have a genie, and what do you want, genie? How can I help you? What wish do you desire? And it has been such a shift for me to stand in that recognition of God, stand in that unification of God, of this source, of this power with myself, and to have this conversation about what's happening, what is going on, and then to be grateful that this conversation has been turned into word form, and that whatever has come forth through this conversation has already gone into the universe, and it's already been done, and it's already on its way to me. And then to release it and just let it go. It's already done. I don't even have to worry about it anymore. But really what it is a shift in mind. It's almost like defogging your windows, this conversation. Because you can see with a foggy window, but you can't see clearly. And going into these spiritual mind treatments, you kind of just clean the window and you're like, oh, look, it's right there. It's been there the whole time. There's nothing to worry about. I can see what's on the other side of this window. So Ernest Holmes says that the spiritual mind treatment truly happens in the mind of the practitioner. So it's about standing in that recognition, standing in that knowingness, and whoever comes forth to you, recognizing the beauty and the wholeness and the completeness of this individual. No matter what's happening, no matter what they're saying, really standing in that. And I've had a few sessions with practitioners. And when I get out of there, I'm like, I am just freaking awesome. I am like, holy moly, I'm cool. Like, geez. And changing the conversation that I have with God from, God, please, if you would just listen to me, this would be awesome, to, God, this is what's happening today. And I just want to thank you for being there. I just want to thank you for all that's already happening. I just want to thank you for loving me. And it really has turned into, this is going to sound really funny, but I have this little thought in my head that God thinks I'm extremely funny. Like, God revels in my actions. Like, God is like, look at this girl. Look at what she's doing right now. You know, like a proud parent, I don't know how to explain this, but almost like when I do things that are really funny and I laugh at them, I know that God is just like tearing up with laughter. Like, I know that God is just like, my goodness, she keeps surprising me. And it's like all the options are available, and God is like, I wonder which way she's going to pick. Because I know whatever way she picks, it's going to be great to watch. It's going to be amazing to see what happens from this. Almost like I have God at the edge of God's seat. Like, what is she going to do next? And that relationship and that like perspective completely shifts how I feel about prayer. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't praying before. It just means that I changed the conversation. I changed the interaction with God, Spirit, Allah. And this Thursday, so the first Thursday of May, is International Day of Prayer. And I was invited to go. Reverend Christian asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, yeah, sure, I'll go. So the mayor was there, and all these interfaith leaders are there. And Reverend Christian was like, you're going to sit here. And he was like, we can sit here. And I was like, Reverend Christian, the table says reserved for speakers. And he was like, yeah, you're with me. You're fine. So I put down my purse and my phone on the table so I can get some water and coffee. Because you know how I feel about coffee, right? I am never this trusting with leaving my possessions in one location and completely walking away. This is a group of individuals. I don't know everyone that's there. I just left it, and I came back, and so I somehow saved my seat, and Reverend Christian lost his. Right? So by the time I get to my seat, I was like, Reverend Christian, where is he? He's sitting in the table in front of me, and I'm sitting with the mayor and with all the speakers of the morning. And I'm like, if this isn't a Forrest Gump moment, I don't know what is.
And meanwhile, God is laughing.
Meanwhile, God is like, I wonder what she's going to do now. Like, what's going to happen? What are you going to do now? There was a seat behind me that was open. And I was like, in my shame of sitting there, I was like, maybe I should just take my stuff and quietly move over. And I was like, but I don't really want to move though. Like everything has started, and it was like, it was one of those moments that if you moved, people would notice that you were moving. So I was like, let me just sit here. It'll be okay. And I remember hearing, just be yourself. Just be yourself. There's no one else you could be anyway. You don't know how to be anyone else. So in all of this, I ended up making friends with the ladies that were sitting next to me. And I stepped out for a second. And when I came back, she was like, where did you go? Where'd you go? And I was like, you missed me already? I was gone for like 2 minutes. She was like, oh no, I want to have lunch with you. I am so, I don't know, captivated by your story that I want to hear more. And I was like, oh yeah, I gave her my number and everything. And the whole time I was like, oh, she made a joke too. She was like, oh, the mayor's about to call you up to talk. And this was a joke because I know that she knew that I wasn't a speaker. So I was like, all right, I'm ready. I was like, let's go. I'll go up there. But in all of that, what I took away was there were all these leaders that I was now talking to, and I felt comfortable talking to. So the leader of the SRF, the Self-Realization Fellowship, he was there, and I was talking to him, and he was like, he told me what SRF was, and I was like, oh, in my self, just me being myself, I was like, that's that place that looks like a castle. right? And he just started laughing and he was like, yes. And I was like, the first time that I saw that castle, I told myself I would work in Encinitas. That was it. I'm going to work here. This is where I want to land. This is where I'm going to be. And he was like, wow. And so where do you work? And I was like, oh, I work at Seaside. So I work at Seaside Center for Spiritual Living along with Reverend Christian. And he was like, wow, that's beautiful. And I feel like if it would have been a couple of months ago, I would have just left. I would have been like, I can't be here. I don't belong to sit in that table, but it was a table and everybody knew who everybody was. So it was my own self-talk where I was like, I deserve to sit here because it's a seat. And if Reverend Christian wants to sit here, then I'll give him my seat. It's not a big deal. It's really not a big deal. I can find another seat. But in that moment, it was just like, I'm just going to stay here. And I actually made friends with the people that were around me without trying to impress them. It was really just me being myself. And what was so beautiful were the different leaders that were there and their prayers. And you can hear the difference, but then you can hear the sound resemblance. Was that there's 1,000, what did they say? There's 1,000 names. There is 1,000,000 ways to talk to him, but there's only one truth. There's only one infinite intelligence. There's only one source. And it was in that moment where I was like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you call God. It doesn't matter. It's just the same source is the same. And I knew this, but it never hit me so profoundly to see a Taoist and to see a Christian do a prayer together. That was just, it was moving in all ways where you can hear back to back what they were saying, how they were describing God, and it's all exactly the same thing. It is the exact same thing. So I remember seeing you last week, John, and I remember telling you, I'm ready. I know what I'm going to talk about. And I was already prepared to talk about how everyone prays. And it was as if God was like, well, you already know what you're going to do, but let me sprinkle some like glitter on it for you so that we can really spice this up. And I couldn't have made it up if I tried. Like, these are the kinds of things that just occur. And really it's about that space, leaving that space for it to happen. I wasn't forcing it. I wasn't demanding it. I am in this complete recognition of knowing that God is, I am, we are like all one. It is all one. Like, we are so powerful in our own ways, so unique in our own individuality. And prayer is all about keeping that individuality and then connecting it with God, keeping that conversation with God, talking to God like you would talk to yourself. And hopefully you talk to yourself kindly, because that shifts everything. It really does. And to me, I was standing on stage, and I remember this was at Power Up, and I was like, all right, everyone on stage. So I started calling everyone by name. I was like singing on the mic, and then I was like, all right, everybody get up here because everybody prays. And somebody was like, that sounds like a song. And I was like, doesn't it? And I was like, that's what we're going to name it. That's what we're going to name this podcast. And it's really been a week of fine tuning and feeling and listening and talking and praying, like having this conversation with God and allowing God to flow through me, truly just be with me, and recognizing that things happen sometimes. It's not all, cupcakes and butterflies. And God is still there. God is always there. It's just, how do you choose to see it? And I remember maybe a couple of weeks ago for the last podcast, I talked about God being present at all times, and remember asking like, God, show yourself to me. And at this point, it's only been 2-3 weeks, and now I'm like, God is there. You don't have to show yourself to me. Like, I know that. Like, it's so ingrained at this point that I it's a knowing. It's a fact. It's a truth. And it's a truth that I can't deny. I won't deny. I choose to believe. And even like, I talk a lot about how, when I was younger, things looked. But really, it's all the same thing. It's all about how I keep seeing God, how I keep seeing my power, how I keep seeing the truth, how I keep reconnecting. Different ways, different times, same truth, same source. So after seeing and hearing all the prayers of this Thursday's National Day of Prayer, feeling what that felt like, the joy that it is to be alive, the joy that it is to know that I'm adding to the consciousness of joy, and I am like a show for God. Like, God is like, this girl, like, what is she gonna do tomorrow? Like, she's up, something's about to happen, she's about to say something, like knowing that I can trust, knowing that now moving forward, instead of going from the fear of X, Y, and Z, the fear of not having this, it's in the love of being myself, the love of being love, the love of God flowing through me. Well, I was going to
say, you have the most awesome support. Mm-hmm. I mean, and you know it. That's the big difference. If people just knew.
Oh, yeah. Oh my goodness, I have such great support. Of course, by you, John. Like, we come in here and we talk, and I'm just like, I'm in awe that I've been able to not only find people like you, but also to recognize it. Mm. Like the support of my mom, because, mind you, she was like a Christian. She would go to church like 5 times a week. Like, she basically worked for church, but she didn't work for the church. And even my mom to come and call me and ask me questions and really be involved in what it is that I'm doing. And my sisters, like, they don't go to church, but like, my little sister came to Seaside one time and she was like, I want to find one like that in Florida. That's huge. That is huge, because we were forced to go to church when we were younger. And that doesn't feel good. And also being there, I felt like I was being judged. I remember going to church and this lady came up to me and she was like, what do you want to do? You want to be a model when you grow up? And I was like, no, I think I want to be an attorney when I grow up. And she was like, oh, your little sister looks more like the attorney. And I was like, all right, well then I don't want to come back here. I don't want to come back here. And I know that it wasn't said in malice. It just didn't feel right. And for my sisters, it was a completely different feeling as to why they don't go now. But having them come to me and asking me questions about what is metaphysics, and my little sister asking me about all this other metaphysical stuff, I'm like, this is beautiful. This is beautiful to see your support in this way, to be so involved in what it is that I am doing, to be so proud of me. Reverend Christian, my goodness, I think he is one of my biggest cheerleaders. Like, anything that I want to do, Reverend Christian is like, yeah, we should totally do that. Like, it's very seldom and very far in between that I get a no from Reverend Christian. My boyfriend, my goodness, like, every time we talk on the phone, he has some way of basically breaking it down, debriefing, and then really seeing what it is for what it is, and picking up the jargon. For whatever reason, that's just a huge sign of support for me. So we'll say something, and if it's in a positive way, he'll be like, and so it is. And I think it's the cutest way to, like, tell me that he thinks that, he's proud of me, without actually saying it, which he has, but that he is proud of me, and that he does go about his day and shifting his mind in more alignment to, science of mind, centers for spiritual living. So many people, it really is beautiful. And it's not only because of the support. I think I'm doing it and then support is there. And like I said, the number one thing is recognizing who's there, recognizing who's doing what, recognizing, appreciating, and being in the full gratitude of that support. Because I said this last night, like, I would not be anywhere without the prayer of my mom and my grandmother. Like, I have no idea. I'd probably in the jungle meditating on like crystals. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That sounds pretty fun, actually. But I've been able to apply. And I think that is the magic. That is the miracle, to be able to apply and to teach and to apply and to learn and to apply and to reach new peaks for myself. Because I feel like every time I grow, my family grows a little bit with me. Every time I grow, I find something more beautiful and more enlightening in those people that are around me, the people that I've surrounded with myself with. Like, I think that's like, I know that's my biggest possession, and it's not something that I could possess, but it's my biggest, like that's my treasure. Those relationships, those people, like, that is how I'm able to nourish my spiritual consciousness, my heart, Yeah,
you're esteemed by those relationships.
Yeah, like it kind of, no, I know what it is. I know that for a while I felt like I was truly losing my mind. Like, really thought I was losing my mind, because I knew that I wasn't thinking the way that the rest of the world was thinking. And I thought there was something severely wrong with me. And it was scary. It was a scary time. And I remember reaching out to certain people, and they were like, "Girl, you're not crazy. Keep doing what you're doing. Like, if you wouldn't have told me this would have been bad." And I remember, like, okay, holding on to those because I was like, if they're telling me that I'm not, that I must not be. And if I think that I am crazy, I don't think that I am. You know what I mean? It's one of those. It was one of those. And to have the strength and the will and the passion to be where I am today really is because of the support. It's because of the conversations. It's because that, those moments where I am just, it's not, oh, that's what it is. It's not feeding my spirituality. It's not feeding who I truly am, that I will be told to sit down and listen. Literally. Sit down and listen up. We're not doing this. This is not how this is going to go. And although it's kind of like, who are you to tell me? It really brings me back to knowing that these are the people that support me. These are the people that want the very best for me. And so you swallow that pill and you take it in. You take it in. And it all goes back to having that conversation with God. Because I know that I tell God, tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do it. I will be the beacon of light that, just carries you around. Like, I just want to exude your presence wherever I go. And so those times where I'm not exuding, I am told, like, this isn't quite right. Like, maybe you can consider this. And of course I'm like, well, you're right. You are right. Because that's what I've asked God for. I've asked God to keep lighting up the way so I can continue walking on that path. And so when God lights up the way, then I have to listen. And sometimes it doesn't feel quite right, but it always ends up being exactly where I need it to be. exactly what I needed to hear, exactly what I needed to feel, exactly what I needed to understand. And so it goes back to that conversation. It goes back to that relationship with God and what that is, what that looks like. And knowing that I've been praying this whole time. My prayers are just a little different now. My prayers are conversations. They are deep connections. They are me asking how I can continue to serve. They've shifted from I need a new car to how can I show up? How can I show up for the better, for the enhancement of X, Y, and Z? And so it's a skill. It truly is. I think it's an art. I think it is beautiful. And I encourage, in whatever religion, whatever faith, whatever culture, whatever that looks like for you, prayer has to be the most divine, the most beautiful experience. And it must be, because that's, with all the relationships that I mentioned, the number one relationship is the relationship with God, the relationship with Spirit, the relationship with universe. And recognizing that relationship in everyone. So, yeah. And I think that is it. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for being here. If you have any questions, please send me an email and I will get back to you.